Do podcast hosts get nervous? Short answer, yes, they do. So often people ask me when we talk about podcasting, you look really confident. You don't look nervous at all. I want to get like that. I want to get to the point where I'm not nervous about podcasting. Now, every time I podcast, am I nervous? Probably not now, but in the early days, absolutely 100%. And I was at school, actually, you would never have heard me public speaking. In fact, I can't even remember being at school. And I used to get nervous about replying to my name in the register. So for those of you that aren't in the UK, depending on how your schools work, in the UK very much, they go around, or they did in the 80s, 90s, that kind of, a while ago anyway, that they go around and they say your name out and you have to say yes, miss, or here, or whatever. And I remember, oh my God, the anxiety that I actually had to say yes. Could you believe it? That's the level of anxiety I had about speaking. And now I have a podcast. So for those of you that are out there still thinking, I cannot have a podcast, I'm too anxious, I'm too nervous, I don't have the confidence, don't you hear me say, yes, you can. You've just got to find the way that works for you. So this thing about I've got to wait till I'm not nervous that's unrealistic. You're never gonna start probably and not be nervous. And sometimes if I get my science hat on and look at anxiety and stress, is that sometimes we need a little bit of that. It actually, if you're kind of into that, I get a bit geeky around this, but if you're kind of into that and wanting to know about your nervous system, you're into your sympathetic nervous system, which gives you that fight-flight response, which makes you more aware and acutely aware of what's going on. You know, athletes need it. You need it if you're going to do a test. You maybe need it when you come on to do your podcast. It actually sharpens your thinking to a certain degree. If you go too far into that sympathetic nervous system and say too long, you're going to get brain fog, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying you should to be the point of, I'm going to puke. That's different. But a little bit of nerves, that's kind of normal. And I think even when I do these little one-to-ones without guests, and on my other past podcast, I have guests come on and I do solo ones and I do guest ones. And if I tell you, just recently, I had on a podcast guest that I had a bit of fangirling going on, okay? So I'm a bit geeky in the fact that she's been one of those people that I just thought, oh, I'd love to get her on the podcast. She's informed a lot of my practice. For those of you that don't know, I'm an occupational therapist. And she has informed a lot of my practice and the way I've worked with kids and parents. So one, I kind of wrote to her going, oh, would you like to come on my podcast? Thinking, she's never going to come on. Who am I? That when she came back and went, yes, of course, I then went into, oh my God, now I'm nervous. And I was. Before that podcast started, I was nervous. Partly because she is the same profession as me, and I've always had this thing about being judged by other OTs, and anyway, we won't go into my psychological needs, that I was nervous before that podcast. And I would say probably it took me until halfway through that podcast to settle into it. And then as I kind of came out the other side and we finished the podcast and we were just chatting, my nerves came back again. So you're unrealistic to think I am going to never be nervous. I need to not be nervous to be able to do a podcast. However, like I did mention, it's not a case of you're so nervous that you feel unwell. And I'm not saying to people, right, just go out and flood yourself with loads and loads of experiences that stress the hell out of you to get better at it. Because actually we know for our central nervous system, that isn't a great way to be functioning. And when we push ourselves to those points of high levels of stress, is this everybody? Some people operate really well under stress. I don't. And I would think probably if you're starting to watch and look at these videos, that you probably are struggling with stress levels, anxiety, not feeling confident enough. And actually, if you're one of those people that are like, I don't know worry about it at all. In fact, I like the stress. That's what helps me do it. This episode, this little section may not be what you need. So this might be one for those of you out there that are, like I've always been called, you're just anxious. You're the anxious person. I'm more than that. I'm me. And part of my anxiety is that I do get nervous and it comes up for certain different reasons. But I suppose what I'm wanting to talk to you about and normalise is that we all get nervous. Some of that will ease as you practice. So my solo episodes, I hated them. Those were the hardest ones for me to get on top. Believe it or not. You might actually believe it. You might watch this and just think, well, I can tell. Or you might be thinking, there's no way I'll be able to tell from this solo that you were really anxious about them or found them really difficult. I was much happier in a guest episode than I was on a solo. But those have changed. I've learned skills, I've adapted, I know what makes me feel anxious. I've sat with some of that anxiety and gone, yeah, it's okay to be a bit anxious. I know it'll disappear. And having a confidence develop as I have got better at it. But I've also got skills and strategies around it. And maybe I need to do another one about that, specifically dealing with if you are someone that finds anxiety and confidence a particular issue about talking. And I think they are slightly different. And why I might need to do a different one is that I would probably approach it differently to a solo one as I would to a guest one. But what I wanted to do was acknowledge that anxiety is normal and that is okay. And I think there's always going to be a level of anxiety. You're putting yourself out there. Even if you don't feel it in the moment, when you press that publish button and you are putting yourself out there as a host and an interviewer, as part of a guest episode, or as a solo podcast, just talking on your own, you're putting yourself out there. And sometimes when I think about it, maybe this isn't a good thing for me to talk about. Sometimes when I talk about it, it makes me go, oh my God, I'm not pressing publish on this one. So the anxiety is normal and natural because when we put ourselves out there, we put ourselves up for criticism. And, I've had comments, YouTube particularly, where people are not very nice. I got told by someone just to shut up with another word on the end of it. And I just thought, you didn't have to listen. If I offended you that much, go turn it off. I don't understand what that response was about. I'll probably now get loads of people saying horrible things on this one. Anyway, for those of you that aren't here to give me a hard time, I wanted to let you know that anxiety and feeling worried about doing a podcast, doing an episode, putting yourself out there is completely normal. And there are strategies and there are things that I use, and I'm going to come back to you with that on another episode to explain those differently because guest and solo ones are slightly differently, and I don't like to make these too long. So, short answer is yes, we do. What do we do about it? We recognize that we are anxious about it, but don't give up. Don't let that be the reason why you can't. And if you can't wait for the next video or whatever to come up to talk you through this bit, reach out to me. I do work with people one-to-one. So if you want to reach out to me and say, I've got this amazing idea about a podcast, but I am absolutely bricking it. I don't think I can do it. Should I explain if I've got American people? Bricking it, frightened, worried. You can also put a sh in front of that and it might make more sense. But if you're worried about it and you really have got this idea, then reach out. I can help you through that and we can do some strategies, especially if you're one of those that aren't your typical person. If you're neurodivergent, if you've got any kind of additional needs, anything like that, then let me know and I will help you through that and we will find a way to get your podcast out there. I've got an example that's just popped into my head. And it's not for me, actually. This is from a guest perspective. I'm going to add this in. Do I? Yeah, I'm going to put it in quickly. I had somebody come on for one of my guest episodes, and I do a pre-podcast chat. I'll talk you through my process at another time, but I have a pre-podcast chat. And it's two people involved in this podcast. Now, one hadn't come and one had. The person that had come, actually, they were the person that had come up with the idea for what they were coming to talk about. They feel unable to come onto podcast to talk because of anxiety, burnout, overwhelm, all those kind of things. So as a host, I felt it was really important to get their voice on. And I had to be creative and think about, okay, well, how can I do that? And I went back with a range of different options for them. And what they've decided to do, and we'll see if this works because I haven't actually done it yet, is they have just agreed to do a bit of a brain dump. They're going to record themselves, not as part of the podcast, on a one-to-one where they feel more comfortable. And then they're going to provide me with their audio. And I am going to see if I can cut that into the podcast where myself and the other person as part of that team are going to be chatting. Because I think it's really important to get people's voices on in a way that works for them. And this might be slightly different because I'm talking mainly to podcast hosts, but you'll see what I mean. It's finding a way that you can get your voice out comfortably. We can edit stuff. If you don't want to go live at any point, and I'm toying with a few ideas about doing live stuff, is you've got an edit option. So get talking and edit stuff out. You can do that. I don't like it when there's masses of editing because it feels really choppy. But if that's what helps you get your first, your second, your third episode out and get past that dreaded 8th episode, where after that we all drop off a cliff, then it's worth doing. So there are different options. There are different ways that you can do that. And I am going to come back with that. I'm going to stop talking. I've gone way over my 10 minutes now. I'm at 12. Anyway, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back with more. Keep an eye out. If you want some more videos, go back and look at the library. There's loads in there about loads of different topics. And I will see you for the next episode. Take care. Bye.